What happens when the most powerful military on Earth sends its most elite operators into hostile territory to destroy something that was never supposed to exist? And what if the target is buried so deep underground that conventional weapons can't even reach it? If this kind of story grips you, do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button right now, drop a like on this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. You won't regret it. Now, let's get into it. For years, Iran has been building something in the shadows. Deep beneath the mountains and deserts of its territory, a network of underground facilities has been expanding. Some are known to intelligence agencies. Others have remained hidden for years, shielded by layers of rock, concrete, and secrecy. But among all of Iran's buried military assets, one facility stood out. A secret underground missile base that Western intelligence agencies believed could change the balance of power in the entire Middle East. This wasn't just another weapons depot. This was something far more dangerous. According to intelligence assessments, the facility housed advanced ballistic missiles capable of reaching targets across the region. Missiles that could strike Israel, missiles that could hit American bases in the Gulf, missiles that could be armed with warheads carrying payloads nobody wanted to think about. The base was reportedly carved into a mountain, reinforced with blast doors, and buried under hundreds of feet of rock and reinforced concrete. It was designed to survive airstrikes. It was designed to survive bunker busters. It was designed to survive almost anything the outside world could throw at it. And that created a problem. Because if you can't destroy it from the air, you have to find another way. The intelligence had been building for months. Satellite imagery showed unusual activity around a remote region in central Iran. Heavy construction vehicles moving at night, ventilation shafts appearing in satellite photos, supply convoys arriving under cover of darkness. Signals intelligence picked up encrypted communications referencing a project codename that analysts had never seen before. Human intelligence sources inside Iran's Revolutionary Guard confirmed the worst fears. The facility was not only operational, it was being expanded. The question facing American military planners was not whether the base existed, it was what to do about it. Diplomatic channels had gone cold, sanctions had failed to slow Iran's missile program, and the window of opportunity was narrowing. Every month the facility stayed operational, more missiles were being assembled, tested, and prepared for deployment. The clock was ticking. At the Pentagon, senior officials debated the options. An airstrike was considered first, naturally. The United States Air Force has some of the most powerful penetrating munitions ever created. The GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator can burrow through 200 feet of hardened concrete before detonating. But intelligence assessments suggested this particular facility was buried even deeper. The mountain above it acted as a natural shield. Even multiple strikes with the heaviest bombs in the American arsenal might not reach the critical chambers where the missiles were stored. There was another concern. An airstrike on Iranian territory would be an act of war. It would trigger a response. Iran's network of proxy forces across the Middle East, Hezbollah in Lebanon, militias in Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen, would be activated. Oil prices would spike, global markets would tremble. The geopolitical consequences were enormous, so the conversation shifted to a different kind of operation, one that was quieter, one that could be denied, one that required the best of the best. United States Special Operations Command received the tasking. The mission was classified at the highest level. Only a handful of people in the entire government knew the full scope of what was being planned. The unit selected for the operation was drawn from the most elite tier of American Special Operations Forces. These were operators who had spent years training for exactly this kind of mission. Men who could infiltrate denied territory, operate without support, complete their objective, and disappear before anyone knew they were there. The planning phase alone took weeks. Every detail was analyzed. Infiltration routes were mapped using satellite data and signals intelligence. The terrain around the facility was studied meter by meter. Guard rotations were tracked. Communication patterns were analyzed. The operators memorized every tunnel entrance, every blast door, every potential choke point inside the facility. The infiltration plan was built around stealth. The operators would not arrive by helicopter. The noise signature was too high, and Iranian air defenses in the region were too dense. Instead, the team would be inserted across the border through a corridor that intelligence had identified as a gap in Iran's radar coverage. From there, they would move overland through some of the most desolate terrain in the Middle East. Rocky valleys, salt flats, mountain passes that hadn't been traveled in decades. The team carried everything they needed on their backs: weapons, explosives, communications equipment, medical supplies, water, food for several days. Each operator carried over 100 pounds of gear. They moved at night and hid during the day, using natural terrain features and camouflage to avoid detection. The journey to the target took longer than planned. The terrain was more challenging than satellite imagery suggested. One section of the route required the team to cross a ridgeline that was exposed to a nearby Iranian military outpost. They waited for nearly 18 hours, lying motionless in the rocks, until cloud cover and darkness provided enough concealment to move. Now, let me pause here for a second. If you're still watching and you're feeling the intensity of the story, that little like button is sitting right there. Just tap it. It takes half a second, but it tells the algorithm to show this video to more people who care about these stories. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? This channel covers the most gripping military and geopolitical stories you'll find anywhere. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss one. When the team finally reached the vicinity of the facility, what they saw confirmed the intelligence. The mountain was real, the ventilation shafts were real, and the security around the site was tighter than expected. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Surveillance cameras covered the main access points. Vehicle checkpoints controlled every road leading to the facility. This was not going to be easy. The team set up an observation post on a ridge overlooking the facility and spent 48 hours watching. Every guard, every vehicle, every shift change. They counted personnel. They identified patterns. They found the gap they were looking for. The facility had a secondary access point, a maintenance tunnel that entered the mountain from the eastern slope. It was used for ventilation equipment servicing and was less heavily guarded than the main entrance. The tunnel was narrow. It would require the team to move in single file, but it led directly into the lower levels of the facility where the missiles were believed to be stored. The breach happened in the dead of night during a period when satellite tracking showed a gap in overhead Iranian surveillance. The team moved fast. 2 operators neutralized the guards at the maintenance tunnel entrance silently. The rest of the team flowed into the tunnel within seconds. Inside, the facility was larger than expected. The tunnel opened into a series of reinforced chambers connected by blast-proof corridors. Emergency lighting cast everything in a dim orange glow. The air was stale and warm. The operators moved through the corridors using night vision and thermal imaging to identify personnel and threats. They encountered resistance deeper inside. Iranian personnel, some armed, were present in the facility even at night. The operators engaged with precision. Every shot was calculated. Every movement was rehearsed from months of preparation. The engagements were short and decisive. When the team reached the primary storage chambers, they found what they came for. Rows of ballistic missiles in various stages of assembly. Launch canisters, fuel storage tanks, guidance systems, computer terminals displaying targeting data. This was not just a storage facility. It was a fully operational missile preparation center. Everything needed to arm, fuel, and launch these missiles was right here, deep inside a mountain, hidden from the world. The team's demolition experts went to work immediately. Charges were placed on the missiles, on the fuel storage systems, on the structural supports of the chambers. The explosive charges were designed to create a cascading failure. When they detonated, the fuel would ignite, the structural supports would collapse, and the mountain itself would bury what remained. The team had a narrow window to complete the demolition setup and extract before the charges detonated. Every minute inside the facility increased the risk of detection and reinforcement by Iranian forces from nearby bases. The extraction was the most dangerous phase. Once the charges were set, the team retraced their route through the maintenance tunnel. By now, alarms had been triggered inside the facility. Iranian security forces were responding. The team could hear vehicles approaching on the access roads. Radio chatter was increasing. The clock was running out. The operators exited the tunnel and moved immediately into the darkness of the mountain terrain. Behind them, the first charges detonated. The ground trembled. A deep rumble echoed through the valley. Then the secondary charges went off, and the fuel storage ignited. A column of fire erupted from the ventilation shafts. The mountain itself seemed to shudder as the internal chambers collapsed. The explosion was visible from miles away. Iranian military units in the region scrambled to respond, but they didn't know what had happened. They didn't know who was responsible. And by the time they reached the site, the American operators were already miles away. They were moving through pre-planned exfiltration routes toward the border. The journey out was no less dangerous than the journey in. Iranian forces launched search patrols. Helicopters swept the area with searchlights. Roadblocks were set up on every major route. But the operators had planned for this. Their exfiltration route avoided roads entirely. They moved through valleys and ravines, using terrain that vehicles couldn't follow. At one point, the team had to cross a river swollen by recent rains. They used waterproof bags to keep their equipment dry and crossed in pairs, covering each other against the current. It took 3 days for the team to reach the extraction point, a remote location near the border where a helicopter was waiting. The pickup was fast, rotors spinning, doors open, operators aboard in seconds. The helicopter lifted off and crossed into friendly airspace before Iranian air defenses could react. Every member of the team made it out alive. The mission was a success. Now here's where things get even more interesting. Officially, this operation never happened. No government acknowledged it, no press conference was held, no medals were publicly awarded. In the world of special operations, the most successful missions are the ones nobody ever hears about, the ones that change the strategic landscape without a single headline. But the evidence spoke for itself. Satellite imagery taken in the days following the operation showed the facility was destroyed. The ventilation shafts had collapsed. The access roads were scarred with blast debris. Thermal imaging showed residual heat from underground fires that burned for days. Iran's state media made no mention of the incident. The Revolutionary Guard issued no statements. The silence was deafening and telling. Intelligence assessments in the weeks that followed confirmed that Iran's missile deployment timeline had been set back significantly. The missiles destroyed in that mountain represented years of development and billions of dollars in investment. Replacement would require rebuilding not just the weapons, but the entire facility. And this time, the world was watching. Now stop for just a moment and think about what you just heard. If this story made you feel something, if it made you think, then you're exactly the kind of viewer this channel was built for. Share this video with a friend. Send it to someone who finds these stories as compelling as you do. Every share helps this channel grow, and it helps us keep bringing you content like this. Now let's continue. The strategic implications of this mission went far beyond the destruction of a single facility. It sent a message that no bunker is deep enough, no mountain is thick enough, no amount of secrecy can guarantee safety from the reach of American Special Operations Forces. For years, Iran had operated under the assumption that burying its most critical military assets deep underground made them untouchable. That assumption was shattered in a single night. But the mission also raised difficult questions. Questions about sovereignty. Questions about the rules of engagement in an era of shadow warfare. Questions about what happens when nations conduct military operations on foreign soil without declaration or acknowledgement. These are the gray zones of modern conflict, the spaces between war and peace where the most consequential actions often take place. Iran's response was measured but significant. In the months following the suspected operation, Tehran accelerated its dispersal strategy. Instead of concentrating missiles in a single large facility, Iran began spreading its arsenal across dozens of smaller, more mobile sites. Tunnel boring machines were spotted at new locations across the country. The game of hide and seek had entered a new phase. For the United States, the mission validated a doctrine that had been evolving for decades. The idea that small teams of highly trained operators, supported by world-class intelligence, can achieve strategic objectives that massive conventional forces cannot. A dozen men accomplished what a squadron of bombers might not have been able to. They did it quietly, they did it precisely, and they did it without triggering a wider war. The operators who carried out this mission returned to their bases and resumed their normal routines. No parades, no interviews, no recognition beyond the closed doors of the special operations community. That is the nature of this world. The most extraordinary acts of courage and skill are performed by people whose names the public will never know. But the impact of what they did reverberates across the region. Every military planner in the Middle East took notice. Every government reassessed its assumptions about what is possible and what is vulnerable. The balance of power shifted, not through diplomacy or economic pressure, but through the boots of a small team of warriors. They were walking silently through a mountain in the middle of the night. And perhaps that is the most important takeaway from this entire story. In an age of hypersonic missiles, artificial intelligence, and drone swarms, the most decisive weapon in the American arsenal is still the individual operator. The person who can think, adapt, and execute under conditions that would break most human beings. Technology enables the mission, but people complete it. Kaliningrad may be Putin's crumbling fortress. Iran's mountains may hide secrets. But as long as there are men and women willing to walk into the darkness and do what needs to be done, no fortress is impregnable, no secret is permanent, and no adversary is beyond reach. Real power isn't measured by what you can build or bury, it's measured by what you can protect. And on that night, deep inside an Iranian mountain, the limits of protection were tested and found wanting. That is the story the world was never supposed to hear. And now you've heard it. If you made it this far, you are a real one. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell so you get notified every time we drop a new video, and leave a comment below telling me what story you want us to cover next. I read every single one. Until next time, stay sharp.